11, 2.
A very good morning to all of you. So it's my pleasure today to welcome you all for the session on emotional intelligence. So today we have with us our very own Mr. Rangarajan Madanagopalan. He's the founder and executive director, Servion Global Solutions. And he's also part of the governing council of Tai Chennai. So on behalf of Tai Chennai and the participants, sir, I welcome you. Now I request Mr. Rangarajan to take over the session. Thank you. Sir, I think you're on mute. Just give me a minute. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
You can go on, sir.
Thanks. Okay. So good morning. I read a WhatsApp this morning, which kind of said that two things for sure. One is COVID has become pandemic, which anyway all of us know. But webinars have become endemic. So I'm kind of scared. And this is my second webinar of the season. So probably this is going to be the last one. I'm a little scared that there is an overdose of webinars. So it's kind of difficult. Okay, so there are a lot of known faces to me as well in this call, and it's kind of difficult to lie in front of them actually. So that makes me a little more nervous as well. Okay, so let's start with so the way it is organized is we're going to spend about an hour or so on the subject, and then hopefully we'll open out for questions. Given that a large number of people log in, I think the system is unmuted or muted everybody, and will unmute based on the chat request that you send. So normally this session is very highly interactive session. I mean, it requires interaction with people. It requires eye contact. Now it's going to be difficult to maintain eye contact with 100 people or 200 people on video. But more importantly, make it even interact. But we're going to nevertheless try. So I may not be able to hear what you say. I may not be able to even see. But let's still do this exercise. Okay. So I'm going to start with some questions. How many of you? I mean, just you can say yes, raise the hand, or you can type chat yes, whatever it is. I will also ask you some very specific questions. It'll be great if you can actually type that in the chat, okay, as much as you can. But it doesn't matter if you're not able to do it. That's fine, because this is a new medium, and all of us trying to get used to this. How many of you think you're all smart leaders? You can raise your hand, or you can type in the chat. And how many of you are intelligent? How many of you have very high IQs? How many of you got angry in the last few days, last 2-3 days? How many of you cried in the last 1 month? How many of you had a joyous moment in the last few days? So I think all of us go through these emotions. All of us have these feelings and emotions. Uh, there are other questions you can ask. How many of you feel that your voice is not heard? How many of you feel that you're not being seen by this world? Okay, so we go through a lot of these emotions. Okay, and we also have a lot of our own perception issues, right? We think we all think of emotions in a particular way. One of the most common perceptions in the business is that it is a bad idea to be emotional while you are running a business. Okay, it's better to run business through IQ, intelligence, brain. Do not use your heart. Do not use your emotions. It is bad to express your emotions outside. Okay, and we're not going to talk about emotions today. I mean, we will come to what we're going to talk about in a moment. So there are a lot of these perceptions that happen. Uh, how many of you think that IQ is born? You're born with a certain IQ. Okay. How many of you think that you can improve IQ? How many of you think that actually we can improve EQ, emotional quotient? We don't know what it is, but we'll figure what it is. But whatever your understanding is, yeah, okay. So the let me set the context of what we are trying to do, okay, and what we are trying to do in this thing. So I'm going to actually share my screen. Let's see if uh, so. So are you able to see the screen? I'm going to use just only the screen as a cue, so don't worry about reading the screen beyond a point. Okay. So what we are here to talk about today is about emotional intelligence, and we'll figure out in a moment what that is. Okay. And we're not here to talk about leadership and all other skills required to run a leadership. You require intelligence, you need competency, you need so many other skills, and we're not going to talk about that, and we are taking that as granted and say that this is something which is absolutely required. Before that, uh, you know we if you're born with brothers and sisters, you'll realize often will hear the complaint that there is a lot of favoritism. If one bit is done to my brother more than me, I feel that my parents show favoritism. Now, the amount of favoritism that we show to our body, okay, from morning to night, we take care of our body, we exercise sometimes, some of us do, but we give it a lot of comfort, we give it food, we give it energy, we give it everything that the body requires. And if you step back for a moment and think how much of that attention, or if at all you give any attention to your mind, your emotions, your emotional well-being rather than your physical well-being. And the answer is, for many of us, including me, is quite negligible. How much do we work on that? How much time we spend on that? So this is something which we can think about, and then in the context of what we are seeing today, every day we see very capable, smart, well-educated CEOs and ex-leaders, dying at a very early age, and I don't mean to scare any of you. You feel, is there something missing in this entire thing? Okay, so that's the context. No, the second context is we are not really talking about here about mental well-being as in depression and other things, because there are people to deal with it, and I'm certainly not an expert in any of that, so I'm not going to talk about that. But here we are talking about leaders, right? Very people who are competent, who are capable, who are running businesses, who are managing teams and all that, which is the reason why all of you are here. Now, it's a very fundamental truth that you need to take care of yourself before you take care of others. And the point two in that is that you need to take care of not only yourself, but you also need to take care of others in leadership. I mean, these are very important aspects. And when I say leaders, I don't mean just leaders as in business. People who run family, their parents and fathers and mothers, they're also leaders, and they need to take care of themselves and they need to take care of their children. Okay, so it's a very important aspect. I think it's a very and then as you see more and more, you'll realize. So I'm certainly not an expert in any of this. My own interaction or my own expertise on this came when I started reading a few years back about that, and then I started thinking about it. So I'm certainly not a psychologist or an expert, but what I am certainly is that I'm somebody who's actually practiced some of this in my life, and I found reasonably good benefits from that. So I can share definitely my experience around this. And for many years we've been running businesses, and which have seen ups and downs and cycles, and knowingly unknowingly we have solved several of those problems, and I'm still reasonably healthy speaking to you today. So that's the only credential that I have, the battle scar that I have. I'm not an expert. Obviously there is a lot of reading in that. The biggest reading that you can do, start with this the Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman. He's the one who actually brought this subject to limelight. Okay, and there are several others. Okay, now the question that we will ask is that do we not have emotional intelligence? What is new about it? I mean, is this something that I'm going to acquire today? Am I not having emotions? Am I not managing my emotions? Am I not running this very successfully for a long time? So why should I learn today? Okay, so let me give you two examples of this. One is all of us breathe day in and day out. It is, I mean, obviously, which is why we are alive, right? It's a stupid statement. But many times, until somebody teaches you, you're not aware how well you are breathing. Are you breathing from your throat? Are you breathing from your lung? Are you breathing from your abdomen? Are you able to slow down your breathing? Are you able to manage your breathing? Can breathing be helpful? So when you go and learn a pranayama, everything that you've been doing from your kid as childhood, as a kid, you know that, but you become a little more aware of it, and then you start doing a few tweaks to manage that. So what we're going to talk about is just that. I mean, all of us are emotionally very intelligent and capable. Okay, so it's just that we become aware of certain aspects of it. We'll pay a little attention to it, and then start actually, learning to see if it can benefit us. Okay, the whole idea is that it should benefit us in performing our roles as leaders or parents or whatever it is. Okay, and if it is not that, it is of no use. The second, so as I said that we're going to do three things. One is we're going to find out why EQ is very valuable, and in fact probably more valuable than IQ. We're going to understand what the constituents of EA are and how to apply in leadership. And then we'll look at some practical ideas, at least practical from my point of view, in terms of what you can do about improving your emotional intelligence, right? Now, some statistics, there's a huge amount of study which is done, and some of the study that I'm quoting are, and most of them are global studies. Among the top performers, it is mapped that over 90% of them have a very high IQ. Okay, and they also mapped and tracked people with very high IQ, intelligent quotient, and only 20% of them actually ended up being very successful. When I say successful, ending up at leadership positions and top positions and things like that. So it's EQ actually is a very sure passport to take you to the leadership position. But more importantly, there are other benefits as well. Emotional quotient helps you to understand your customers better, and then we'll see some aspects of it down the line. Very poor EQ can actually help you lose your job, and we've seen some of that. Okay. Poor EQ also, it has been researched that it leads to unethical and criminal behavior. Okay, but these are very minor issues compared to the huge impact the emotional health has on the physical health. I think this is single most important reason why we should pay attention to the emotional health. And when you actually reach the top at a CEO or any leadership position, sometimes, many times, it is a very lonely position. It's very lonely. But I think I asked a question whether IQ comes with birth. Over centuries, the IQ levels have gradually gone up. Okay, because of the environment and better learning and cognitive capabilities. But by and large, IQ actually comes with your birth when you're born. Okay, and you marginally improve it as you apply more and more skills. Many people, vast majority, don't even work on any of that. So actually, it's a reasonably static thing compared to EQ. Compared to that, EQ can be significantly improved. Okay, EQ, emotions lead to feelings, your response to the feelings lead to your behavior, and behavior is something which can be coached and changed over a period of time. And so EQ actually can be improved in reasonably short span of time and significantly improved. Okay, so just as a disclosure, and it doesn't mean anything to any one of us. So a few years back, I took a score. I mean, there are several tests available. I'll talk about it, and right in the end, I'll talk about it. But those tests are not important. It's not a comparison and all that. But I took a EQ test in one of the standard models, and I think it's probably about 7-8 years back. My score, from a percentile point of view, and it's a global system where continuously, every time more people take the database becomes stronger and the comparison becomes stronger. I was at something like 89th or 90th percentile. I don't remember exactly what it is, but about roughly say 90 percentile level. And I took just as a out of curiosity, and it didn't mean anything because I don't know whether who I am being compared with, and honestly I don't care about it. But I took out of curiosity, I took a score of the same test last week, and my percentile was 96th percentile. And I would like to believe that in the 8 years, a lot more people have tested and the database has become stronger. So while I don't care about comparing with others, my own scores have improved significantly. Okay, but the bigger reflection of that is when your EQ improves, you will be able to see it in the team that you are dealing with. Okay, your team and your people surrounded with, they'll be able to see it. Okay. So now I told you that it is not something which we are discovering new. Emotional intelligence or emotion is not something which you are doing. Like any skill, okay, you normally start with being incompetent in a particular area, and you are unaware of it, unconscious about it. As a first step, you become actually conscious that you're incompetent in that. And I'm using a strong word, incompetent, but it denotes basically that you're not fully aware of that skill. Then you become consciously competent. Okay, it's like learning a car. Initially, I don't know how to touch a car. I don't even know how to open a car. Then I have some idea about opening a car and driving basics. Then I become very conscious. Every time I change a gear, I know consciously I'm changing a gear. Okay, and then over a period of time, you practice more and more and more. Okay, the famous Goldwell model of 10,000 hours of skilling will make you an expert in everything. So once you become an expert, you actually unconsciously competent. You are able to apply you are able to drive while you are thinking something, you are talking to somebody, listening to music, and not being conscious about changing gear, which is exactly what any new skill will do that, and we will also attempt to do that. I think what we'll attempt to do here today is become conscious about the aspects of emotional intelligence, practice, and over a period of time will become unconsciously competent. Okay, so let's start with theory. What is an emotion? What how does this work in your brain? How does it work scientifically? See, emotion is a very momentary, spontaneous uh, feeling or reaction which happens, okay, which is unconscious, which is not planned for, which is not logical, and it happens very, very rapidly with usually a physiological change. Most emotions have an impact or a indication in your body. Okay, when you're angry or you're tensed and stressed, and your heart rate goes up, your stomach churns, and so on and so forth. So it usually is accompanied by a physical change. So let's spend 5 minutes on what this is, and let's go into some science of this. So I'm showing, and so it's in our neuro and our brain system. Okay, all our sensory organs actually take the signals and send it to thalamus, which actually processes all the sensory thing. And I promise to keep this very simple and just relevant to why we are doing this. Okay, and they convert this into neuro signals and send it to the biggest part of our brain, which is the cortex, neocortex, which is the rational brain, which actually analyzes the situation and gives the response back and all that. Now, so look, I'm seeing a fire, I'm seeing a car coming in, whatever it is. So what do I need to do, or how do I need to respond? Now, the response is usually routed through a small portion at the base of neocortex called amygdala. This is amygdala is actually from a Greek word for an almond. It's an almond-sized part, which actually is a very funny thing. That's what makes all these emotions work. So that is the place where all the emotions get triggered, and any decision of the neocortex is always routed through the amygdala. Okay, which converts that into a response along with the feeling. Which is why we say that, and those of you who have been in sales, I can see that selling or buying is an emotional process. It is not a rational thing. If somebody thinks that a customer is buying your products or goods because you're for a technical reason, actually it's stupid. He is buying because he has trust in you. Okay, it's a very rational, emotional process. So it converts the decision and adds an emotion with it and sends it to the rest of the body. No, this amygdala also, so the amygdala has a small memory of its own, okay, where it stores the emotional responses. For a particular action A, the response is B. For action B, the C, it is response is D, and so on and so forth. No, there is also a bypass route usually between thalamus and amygdala. There are situations where the signal, before it goes to cortex, it actually goes directly to amygdala. And those are called fast response situations. Suppose you see a fire, or you see somebody trying to attack your child, or some car coming to hit you head on. Now, this time the response from neocortex takes a few milliseconds, and you can't wait for that. So the amygdala actually takes over and starts giving the reactions, the emotions. Okay, and it's a very important, which is why we are saying that a lot of impulsive reactions that we see to anything happens out of amygdala, and later on, after a few seconds, neocortex takes over, and so on and so forth, and all that. By which time we probably have murdered somebody already. So this is just enough technology to understand, or science to understand, that our emotions are controlled by amygdala, and amygdala has a database of a table of emotional stories and responses there. So, which is enough actually. Okay. Now, there are only 4 emotions. I mean, so the like in colors, right? There are only 3 basic colors, and everything else is made of that. So there are only 4 basic emotions which constitute everything that can be said. And there is some theory that there are 6 actually. These 4 are basically: I'm mad, I'm sad, I'm glad, and I'm scared. Okay. Mad is when something unfair or unjust happens and you get angry. Various shades of angry: irritated, frustrated, rage. Mad, keep adding more and more to it. Everything comes under mad or angry. Sad is when you lose something. Okay. I wanted to attend. Is my audio coming? It's low, is it? Saurav?
So it's a little low. Suddenly it got a little low.
Is it better now?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I can hear you over here. There are still people commenting that they cannot hear.
Okay.
Yeah, it's better is what they say.
Unfortunately, maybe there's a net issue. I'm in the same place. Okay, so
Yeah,
sad is when you actually you wanted to go out and play golf and it rained, and so you're not able to play. So you lost an opportunity to play. So it's a loss which makes you sad. Glad is when you get what you wanted to achieve, right? Okay, and glad and joy and delight and hundreds of things that you can say. And scared is something where you expect an outcome and your fear that may not happen. Okay, you're uncertain about the future and what happens. Now, these 4 emotions manifest into today they've documented almost as much as 400 plus distinct feelings. Okay, for example, irritation is a sustained anger. Jealousy can be a part of sad and a part of scared. Added to that, mad, where I'm angry. Okay, so very interesting for play of these words. Okay, so the reason I'm saying this is that normally we are actually very poor in expressing our feelings. When I ask how do you feel, okay, many times, and then I think included me, that we said we feel good, we feel sad, we're really not very accurate in putting out our emotions or feelings. Okay, so the first step in being aware of that is the homework that I'm going to give to all of you. Preferably if you can do it today, tomorrow, or the weekend. That in each of this, you list 5 or 6 or 10 things that will make you mad or that made you mad in the last 1 year. I get mad if somebody tries to tell a lie to me. I get mad if somebody comes late to my meeting. Things like that. Okay, so just write down what makes you mad, what makes you sad, what makes you glad, what makes you scared. The reason I'm saying this is that many times we don't sit down and become aware of what makes us mad. So many times our response to that is not so calibrated. So it's a first step in knowing your emotions is to know them as they come in, right? So it's very important to document. And it's an exercise that I've done, and I think, trust me, it is a very, very useful exercise. Initially, we will be very poor in writing because our vocabulary is not good. But over a period of time, we'll improve. Maybe not 400 emotions, but at least maybe 100 emotions we can do. Right. So we figured out there are 4 basic emotions. But what is emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence is not about emotion. Okay? Emotional intelligence. First, just to identify what triggers that emotion, what makes you angry, and become aware as it happens. I'm getting angry at this moment. I'm getting excited at this moment. Perceive them as they happen, as to why and when it happens. Now, the second part is that it also has a impact, as I told you, on a physiological aspect. So how do these emotions manifest? Okay, do these emotions manifest as, like, every time? I mean, I've been making presentations and speaking for almost 30 years. I've done thousands of it, but even every single time I go, I have butterflies in my stomach. My stomach churns, my heart rate goes up. Okay, so the anxiety of making a speech or talking about something, or a public speaking, actually gives you certain reactions, certain breathing, certain responses, certain manifestations. It's important.
So there's an issue with the audio again. Sir, I'll be muting you and unmuting you again. I think that will. Yeah, please try now, sir.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir. Perfectly.
Okay, sorry. I don't know what to think. So as I was saying, that what triggers the emotion as it happens, how does it manifest in your body? Okay. The third is how do you manage that? What is your response to that? I think that's the most important thing. So the emotion intelligence is not about emotion. It is about identifying them as it happens, figuring out how it manifests, and how do you manage that. There's only three simple aspects of it, and it's a very, very complex science on that. So based on various aspects, they model this emotional intelligence on various aspects, and the most common, most powerful model started with Daniel Goleman, but most of the research taken is a 4-domain model. Okay, called there are 4 aspects of it. One is the self-awareness, how self-aware you are, and we'll figure out what these things are eventually. Okay. The second aspect is, how do you manage these emotions? The third aspect, third domain, is the empathy, and fourth is a social skill. And these are very relevant to leaders or people who deal with multiple people, or parents and others. There are several other finer aspects. We'll kind of not go into that today. Self-awareness is, as I said, are you able to feel an emotion as it happens? And trust me, many of us are not trained to do that, which is why that exercise of writing down, that is important. And there'll be also do some few more exercises towards the end to kind of be able to observe and realize. The second is, can you express your feeling very accurately? Okay. No, but the most important aspect is, there is a difference between feeling and action. And let me explain this with a simple example. There are situations where you have a murderous rage. You're so angry with somebody, and you feel like killing that person. Now, that is a feeling. But actually, you don't kill that person, right? Most of the times. Otherwise, you'll be in jail. The killing is actually the action. The feeling that I want to kill somebody is the feeling. Now, the same thing, for example, I'm so upset with somebody, and I'm sorry, I probably have to use the positive examples as well, but I'm saying I'm so upset with somebody, so I can yell at that person and say that what the heck are you doing? And this is not done now, and so on and so forth, which is one action. The second action is that I can convey the same anger through saying that, look, what you're doing is not acceptable to me. I am very upset with what you're doing, and this is affecting me, and so on and so forth, or this is affecting the organization, and so on and so forth, and convey that. So there are different choices of actions that are possible. Feeling and actions are not same. A lot of times people confuse. People feel that somebody is partial to me. They feel, but when you ask them, is there evidence that he was partial to you? They struggle to come up with an answer. Okay, so the good leader, emotionally intelligent person, will be able to differentiate between feeling and action. Okay, now this next aspect is what is your role in that? Okay, in every time you are upset or every time you're thrilled or happy or joyous, whatever be your emotion, uh, there is some element of what you did, what your role is. Okay, and you are responsible for that. Now your ability to look at that in peace and understand what is your role in this entire thing is a very important aspect of emotional intelligence, and this comes out of practice actually, right? So the what is your role also determines what kind of actions you take in that particular scenario. Okay, now there's another aspect called rumination. I mean, one of the things that happens to many of us is that if we are affected in a particular scenario, good or bad, we tend to sit and keep playing that back in our minds and again and again and again. The scenario plays out many times. Good, bad, ugly, whatever be the emotion, we tend to play that back. What that does is that silently it actually starts bleeding your emotions. Your emotional health starts bleeding. So rumination is something which you need to be extremely aware how much of rumination that we do. The next most important thing is, and I think many of you would have noticed, is that uh, this is called a neurobiology of authenticity. So there are portions in your brain which are extremely good in picking up the non-verbal signals. Let's say I'm talking to you, okay, and I speak all right things, and what it looks basically like a truth. But there's something that you're picking up from my actions, which is non-verbal, a cue. Okay, whatever I'm speaking actually goes to your cortex, but the non-verbal cues actually go and tell you that there's something that I'm speaking there's a gut feeling that it is not truth. Okay, you think that you're speaking to some people, you're making a presentation, you can pick up a cue that somebody is actually very disinterested in what you're talking about. Okay, you think that this is most important, you're delivering extremely good value to that person, and the other person might think that, look, might pass a cue that it is not so. Your ability to pick up non-verbal cues and not necessarily what you listen or what you hear is a very important aspect. One of the reasons why, one of the very so when you are a leader and when you're trying to help somebody, when you're a parent, you're trying to help somebody, one of the best ways of getting around this is actually having a conversation. Now, when you have a conversation, particularly about an emotional aspect of it, or a strength or a weakness and things like that. Now, if you're having it with a boss or you're having it with a son, the last thing that you will say is to actually, or you expect the other person, if you want to help them, is to say that they will actually be exposing their weakness or their challenges, their issues with you. Why would they do that? Why would I tell what my weakness to my boss? Okay, so a very tool which is very powerful for emotionally strong people, leaders do that very often, is what is called as a self-disclosure. Okay, people actually disclose a weakness or an issue or a challenge or experience that they have with them, so that the other person actually opens up. Okay, self-disclosure is a very powerful weapon. Okay, let me give you an example. I'm going to talk about one technique down the line where you learn to observe things. When I started learning the technique, one of the first things that I found out was that in many conversations, and this happened many years back, a lot of time it ended up that the conversation, that while I'm trying to help somebody, the conversation 60-70% of the time was about myself. I ended up talking about me rather than the other person. Okay, and it is obviously very uncomfortable truth, right? So in some sense, I was almost trying to promote myself. Okay, then I went a little deeper and found out that actually my basic nature is not something where I promote myself. I mean, and I would like to believe that I have reasonable amount of humility. So it was creating a conflict between my basic character and what I was doing, and the conflict was causing pain. Okay, so thanks to that, I realized that maybe when I'm having a conversation with somebody, it should be about that person a lot more than me. I mean, I can give examples, but the conversation should be about that person and not me. Now, it was a huge challenge to accept and make this disclosure in front of others, because then I realized that actually the most confident people are more comfortable actually giving this disclosure. So disclosure is a very, very important aspect. Now, and they say that last aspect of self-awareness is a personal mission statement, whether as a leader or as a person. What is your mission? What is your goal? What is your purpose? If you're able to define that and write it down somewhere, and that will be homework for all of you, that over the next weekend or so, can we write down our personal mission statement? What is it that we want to do? The reason why we want a personal vision statement is sometimes these statements or these values guide us in way we respond. We will see that in the next slide or so. Okay. So the what defines self-awareness is these aspects, like knowing your feelings, knowing the difference between feeling and actions. Feeling and actions are not same. What is your role in playing that? Picking up non-verbal cues and self-disclosure. Now, once you have an emotion, okay, or a feeling, now how do you respond to that? How do you manage that? What is your response to a success? What is your response to a failure? What is your response to a customer who says he wants to throw you out? What is every time do you fall? Do you get up or not? Your IQ doesn't actually make you get up. It is your emotion, your emotional, your ability to manage your emotions, okay, which make you get up from every time you fall. Or how do you manage when you actually reach the top? Okay, how do you manage COVID? How do you manage tsunami? So what is your response to that? Okay, and there are some very obviously it's a very huge topic, but I want to highlight a couple of aspects in this particular thing. One is obviously, I mean, as a person, are you able to give hope in a given scenario? Or how do you respond? I mean, is your response shutting off and saying that the world is like this and become cynical? Or is your response leading from the front, right? So there is a very key aspect of the emotional intelligence and emotional well-being called delayed gratification. Okay, I'll give you an example. In 1960s, they did a very massive study, and the study went on for about 30, 40 years almost. A bunch of kids from the early stage, they were given what is called as a marshmallow test. Marshmallows are the sweets that people make, right? So they were all told, a bunch of kids were told that you are put in a room, they were put for 15 to 20 minutes and said that if you have two choices. You can take one marshmallow during this 15-20 minutes, or if you don't touch anything, when you come out, you will get two. If you're able to control and not take that one marshmallow, you'll get two. And they observed the kids through CCTV and other thing. No, it's a big struggle, right? When you have marshmallow in front of you, you feel like taking it. You so love it, and people do all kinds of things. They will jump up and down. They get distracted. They do things. Some of kids end up taking it. Now, they actually mapped these kids from that time onwards to track their progress for 15, 20 years, and they figured out there are two sets of people. The people who took marshmallows were leading a normal life. But the people who did not take and came out and took two, they ended up actually being very successful leaders, very stable leaders, very compassionate leaders, and so on and so forth. So, are you willing to sacrifice today's gain for tomorrow's gain? Are you willing to postpone the reward that you want to get today to a much later stage? Very tricky question, but this defines a very key aspect of how you respond to a situation. Okay, and those of you actually, if you look back and do some thinking about it, there are many times when you actually said no, and that kind of has helped actually. The second important aspect of that, which I want to highlight, okay, is what is called as a Pandora's box. Okay, now the Pandora's box is a very interesting aspect. Pandora was a beauty, right? All of us are aware, and she was told she was told that she can't open a set of boxes. These boxes were created by angels who were jealous, and she couldn't resist the temptation. She opened the boxes, and disaster started striking. Misery, hunger, everything started. This is a Greek story, right? And then the angels got very nice to her and said that, no, please don't open the last box. And that is the box called hope. Okay. So if you have hope, you can get over those issues. So that is the story here is about positive thinking. Can positive thinking help in terms of managing your situations better? Okay, and there's another small little story where I read somewhere that you can actually create a positive thinking even in the passwords that you use typically. So because you type your password many times, okay, so if you have a message or a thinking that is positive in that might help. So I tried this for about 3-4 years, and very strangely, at least 70-80% of the time, whatever I'm using as a password, if I want to lose weight, just giving an example, or get fit, or I want to achieve something in that, and more I use it as a password, many times that happened. Not necessarily in scientific, but this is something which psychologists use that as a thing. So how do you manage your emotions? How do you follow through your commitments that you made? Is the next aspect of it. The most important, most valuable tool for leadership is actually empathy. Okay, and so empathy, all of us understand at a very broad level that empathy is putting yourself in others' shoes. But since we are doing a very technical skill, so the empathy is broadly into 3 categories. One is what is called cognitive empathy. Cognitive empathy is basically seeing others' point of view. Can you put yourself in others' shoes? Very, very difficult aspect. I mean, a lot of us struggle to put ourselves in others' shoes, but that's the first part of it. The second part is what is called as the emotional empathy, which is basically, can you feel the same feeling that the other person feels? Okay, are you able to cry with the other person? Are you able to enjoy with the other person? Or if you have an employee who's actually joyous and you are sad, okay, that's the second part of it. The third aspect of it is a emotive concern, which is basically saying that no, I'm able to see that this person is feeling sad, or feeling anxious, or feeling joyous, but what is it that I can do to help? What helps that other person requires from you, without actually that person having to say that? Okay, if you're able to pay attention to it and acquire that, you reach the highest levels of empathy. So it's basically putting yourself in others' shoes, being able to at least sometimes feel the way other person feels, but also get an idea as to why that person is feeling that way and what can you do to help that. So 3 elements of that. Now, obviously the highest levels of empathy actually morphs itself into a compassion. Okay, compassion is the highest form of one of the highest forms of empathy, and in fact, Dalai Lama actually and Daniel Goleman puts a theory saying that extreme compassion can be applied to businesses. For example, if you actually take a stance that I will do whatever is right for the customer, and put the customer as the first thing, even if it is not convenient to me, and I do extreme care, which is compassion to customer, actually produces phenomenal amount of results. And some of you who work with us actually have seen some of that actually in our own lives. Okay. The last aspect of empathy is the sense of sacrifice by the leader. I think that is a very, very powerful display of empathy. Okay. So now the homework here I would like to think about is that what are the few empathetic situations that you've seen in the last few months, few weeks, and write it down, play that in your mind, and go through that. But empathy is a very single most powerful tool a leader can employ to actually win over the loyalty of people, win over the engagement of people, and it's a very, very powerful tool. The fourth element is the social skills, right? Your ability to influence others. How are you able to persuade others? One of the key aspects of emotional well-being is actually your ability to tell a story. Communication is one step, but if you're able to communicate that as a story, in fact, Harvard actually in the millennial edition of top 5 leadership skills at an absolutely topmost level, identify storytelling as actually a very one of the 5 skills of the top thing. So how well are you able to convey your stories to others, why we are doing what we are doing, and so on and so forth. Conflict management, collaborating with the teams, negotiation skills. I'm not getting into any of this, but these are things which are social skills. The first is knowing about yourself, which is self-awareness. The second is the managing that whatever your self-emotions are. Third is basically empathy toward others. But you're doing all this to run an organization or run a family or whatever it is. So it's a social skills. You need to do it with others. So it's a social skill, also comes as a part of the intelligence. And how are you able to motivate others? How are you able to, influence others to perform? How many times you take the initiative and run? I mean, these are all elements of the social skills. And I'm not going to spend much of time because these are things which all of you practice very regularly. So where can you apply? I mean, we learned what are the 3 aspects of 3 secrets of emotional intelligence. What are the 4 domains of intelligence are. So now where do we apply this, right? And I'm kind of rushing this a little bit because of time. Okay. So few areas of applying emotional intelligence in leadership. Of course, as I said, the first aspect is you have to take care of yourself if you need to take care of others. If you can't manage yourself, how can you manage your business? I mean, this is very, very fundamental to it. Not many of us pay attention to that. But I think the one aspect, or the second aspect, which I think is a very important aspect is, and this is true in business, this is true in life. When you look at a scenario of success, okay, associate a feeling with that, and then ask that thing. Let's say I want to achieve this goal, I want to do this project. Now, when you define success of that particular thing, ask yourself, is that success, when you actually achieve success, is it for you or is it for everyone who's around you? Or sometimes it may not be possible to have everyone succeed, but how many of the people around you will also succeed when you succeed? And there are times when we actually take decisions where the success is good for a few people, but not good for so many others. Okay, so if you are able to actually practice or think through and then later on practice scenarios of success where many people other than you also are able to succeed, you're most likely to have a very good success of that particular project, and pun intended. But more importantly, when you actually achieve that success, you will not be lonely and you will be able to sleep well. Okay, so this is not something which all of us want everybody to succeed, but we don't really think through, right? So the one of the techniques that people say is that just think through it. I mean, how do you do that? The next is a very key aspect, and I want to spend a little time, and actually then I want to move on to the next one. It's a very important aspect. There is the psychologists define what is called as a flow. Okay, uh, let's say you have a skill and you're doing a job, and without being able to do it. In the skill that you're doing a job, you achieve a certain results. Now, if you actually achieve this, if your goal is to achieve the results that your skill is capable of, let's say your 100% achievement, what will happen is if you keep doing that again and again for repeatedly, you will become more and more expert, and you will do that job with a lot more ease. Then you will end up actually getting into a zone called bored. I'm getting bored of what I'm doing. You'll see employees getting bored. Okay, so they say that actually the best zone to operate is to challenge the people and say that, hey, I can achieve X. And this is particularly important when you are recovering from a scenario like COVID. I mean, logic will tell you that markets are bad, things are bad, things are going to take time, economy is sunk, customers won't buy anything. So you tend to take a target or a zone which is actually realistic and which is say it is, I can achieve that. Now, the best results come out when actually you move to a stage where it is difficult, moderately or slightly, depending on the capability of the person, more difficult than to achieve than your normal capabilities. Okay, they say that when people operate in that, and I think many of you can actually play back in your minds, when you do something like that, the self-absorption is completely gone. You're not conscious about what benefit that you're getting, what results that you're going to get, how you will achieve anything, what you will get out of it, is what salaries you will, money you will make, and all that. You are in a zone of ecstasy, and that zone, you will actually be extremely productive and very joyful. Okay? You normally won't care about the results. And in fact, Bhagavad Gita actually says that you focus so much on your action that you don't worry about results. The flow is the zone where your best results come in. It is usually more difficult to achieve than your normal capability is. But the warning here is that you shouldn't put it in such a high that it's okay to 30% overachieve or 40% overachieve. But if you put a target as 200%, now the target is too difficult to achieve, then people will resign and say that, look, they will lose interest in it, they will give up. So the leadership's biggest capability is to create and make the team operate in the zone of flow. Okay, and please Google and read this. Actually, it's a very, I'm just crunching the whole thing into a short thing, but flow is a very nice region to operate, and it's a good reason to operate for even your children and all that. Can you challenge them more than what they can do? Okay, I mean, something similar to what I'm trying to teach, emotional intelligence, right? This is way beyond my capability, but yeah, I'm enjoying it. Okay, now the other aspect is there's a constant debate between, should you use your brain to take decisions, should you manage your use your heart to manage, or use your brain to manage. There's no simple answer to that, but I think the most important, what shall I say, successful or very often used method by successful leaders is, you make all your decisions using a neocortex, rational, everything is fine. But actually implement those decisions through your heart. Okay. They say a simple term, just think about it. You get into the brain of your colleague through their heart. it's a very profound statement. But if you think about it, it'll throw different meanings. So how can you actually bring an emotion or a feeling into everything that you're doing after you take a decision? And in fact, if you really go back, the neocortex also does the same thing. It takes all the rational decisions and passes it through actually amygdala to implement. So there is no decision or anything which happens without emotions. In fact, there is a research that the people who an accident where the amygdala is affected, they're incapable of making decisions. They're incapable of actually feeling anything. Very smart, high IQ people. Okay. Now the last part of it, we'll spend about 5-10 minutes in this, and then we'll take some questions. Is what can we do? Is there other techniques or simple things that we can do to improve our awareness or any aspects of the 4 aspects of the emotional intelligence? I'll probably take 2 of them for the lack of time. Okay. First is called a self-aware, right? I mean, where you have to identify what triggers, what emotions as they happen, and what is triggering. Is there a role that I have to play, and all that, right? Now, somebody taught me, my yoga guru taught me a simple technique. Okay, and I strongly recommend some of you try that if you feel like. Let's say you take a situation, you are in a meeting, you are in an argument, you are in an important, very good meeting, very important meeting. A bunch of people are there. There are a lot of conflicting views, and you played something, or there are situations like that, right? Not having coffee, tea, and all that. That very important scenario. After that is over, let's say you had a 1 hour meeting or 1 hour situation with a customer or something like that. Any situation, you come back and close your eyes, okay, and play back that what happened in that 1 hour in your mind for about obviously shrink it, because you can't play everything. If it is a very important meeting, you may want to play longer, but maybe play it to about 10% or 15%. If it is a 1 hour meeting, play for about 10 minutes time. Okay, just mentally close your eyes and observe and say what really happened in that situation. Now, very important aspect, and I think it's going to be difficult to implement, is that you will start judging. Oh, yeah, oh, I was bad. I shouldn't have said that. No, please don't do that. Initially, you will do that, but you practice it about 10 times, 15 times. You will get over that. You be just an observer, like a camera, a non-living thing. Just be an observer of what you said, what others said, how somebody behaved, what cue was there, and all that. Just close your mind and listen to it. No judgment. No say that it was good, that was bad, I should have done that, I shouldn't have done that. And then get on with life. Just don't think about it at all. Now, if you play this many times, maybe 10, 15, 20 times such situations over the next 6 months or so, what really happens is that this particular thing that we are playing does 3 things. One is it improves your ability to observe. So you will start becoming more attentive, more being able to pick up cues of others, feelings of others, even when they don't state it so openly. That's the first very simple benefit. The second benefit is that, the neocortex, as I said, is a database, right? This goes and puts this in the database. So if you somewhere felt that you snapped in a particular situation where you could have handled differently, it stores that in that particular situation there's a snap. Okay. Later on, 1 year down the line, when there's a snap which comes in, it kind of asks you whether you want to snap or you don't want to snap. The third, which is the most powerful thing, which is actually the crux of many leaders, is it improves your intuition or gut feeling. It is like a friend. It's like a conscience which is actually telling you when you're alone and you're sitting in front of somebody and you need to make a decision, that your negotiation. You don't have anybody to phone a friend. This is your best phone a friend. So, very again, simple thing. Any key situation, play it back about in a rewind mode, little abridged. Close your eyes. Enact them don't enact them like a picture. Okay, he came, he sat there, you sat there, and imagine the place. No judgment. no expectation, move on with life. Don't do anything about it. Do it 20 times, you will start seeing your ability to observe actually gets better. Okay, you will become more self-aware. The second thing, which is a last thing that I will speak about, even though there are other things in the slide, is this is lady called Kelly McGonigal. Okay, and then you can YouTube her in TED Talks. She's done beautiful research, and I think one of the most often asked questions is that I am in a stressful situation. What do I do? I mean, my job is stressful. I have two job offers. One is a stressful one, other is a less stress, but this is more attractive to me. What do I do? So, a lot of times we think that the stress is a bad thing, and stress kills and stress is affecting your cardiovascular health, and you can have heart attacks and all that. No, she's done a lot of studies, and she's put a theory called "Make Stress Your Best Friend." So there was a study of about 30, 40,000 people where they were put under stressful situations, and their health and the response to the stress was monitored. The first set of them believed that actually their stress is harmful to them, and they all had later on a very high incidence of cardiovascular disease, and some of them passed away as well. All these things happened over a period of time. There were another set of people who were told that actually, you expect a stressful situation in this because your job requires that. And actually, stress or the palpitation or the breathlessness is your body's response to giving you energy to deal with it. They were just told to believe that. Okay. And surprisingly, the second category, many of them hugely recovered from that, and actually the stress did not affect them thing. In fact, they went one step further. See, what really happens is when your heart is pounding, okay, which is normal. My heart was pounding when before I started this meeting. Okay, now your blood vessels thicken, your arteries constrict, right? Now, when you start believing that the stress is normal and your body's normal response and it's not harmful, those people, they medically analyzed that while the heart was pounding, the blood vessels did not constrict and they were actually normal, which means that they were not affecting your heart. So if you choose stress as your friend, and if your attitude towards stress is that, yes, it is a way of, my body's response to way of telling me that I'm ready to handle this, you are likely to feel better. No, nobody wants stress, but when you have a stress, you need to deal with it. This is one aspect. The second aspect, there are two other aspects she speaks about, which is very, very interesting. One is there is this hormone called oxytocin, right? If you Google it, they immediately will say it's a love hormone, it's a cuddle hormone. If you have more oxytocin, you feel like hugging somebody. Very bad word at these times. COVID times, nobody should hug each other, right? But it's a thing which makes you feel like a physical contact with this. But there's another aspect of this oxytocin which is actually very interesting. Oxytocin is a anti-inflammatory. It heals you, but more importantly, your heart has receptors which receive oxytocin and they regenerate the skills, which means that your heart is getting better, and no, you will not have heart attack, right? Now, they found out through research that when you actually in under stress, if you seek help or when you go out to help somebody, when you extend a human contact, when you are in the company of people, and probably even a physical contact, the oxytocin production is much higher, which helps you cope with the stressful situation far better. Now, typically when we are upset and depressed mode, we actually want to be alone. And this research is telling you exactly opposite. You should actually go out and reach. We should, and this happens in both sides. It happens to a person who's seeking help as well as a person who's giving help. In both situations, very significantly higher production of oxytocin. Okay, so lesson here is that when you are stressed, actually don't feel bad to seek help. Or if somebody is in a such situation, you go out and help. In both situations, your ability to handle stress gets better. And the last of it, which I want to keep it as my last element in this particular presentation. And then of course there is so much you can read, and so many experts are there, so many YouTube videos are there, and all that. The last research they did was they mapped a set of people who had stressful life, but were managing their life themselves. They also mapped a set of people who are very stressed and actually equally stressed, but they were actually people who were compassionate, who were helping out socially, and who were helping out a lot of others. Something. The research showed that the stressed people had a 43% chance of getting a heart attack and cardiovascular disease, and stress was contributing 30% for that. And in people who were compassionate, who were socially conscious and helpful, the stress-related influence on the cardiovascular disease was zero. So compassion, it's been proved scientifically that actually hugely helps you to live a very, very healthy, happy life. What better time than now to be compassionate to the people around you, from the people who are more fortunate to be sitting in a AC room and listening to a conference. Okay, so that kind of sums up my thing. So what we learned today is that emotions are 4 basic types. Your ability to understand the emotions as they happen, find out what triggers them and what it produces in your body, and how to manage is the emotional intelligence. 4 basic domains: self-aware, managing the emotion, empathy, and social skills. And we also learned a couple of and we learned how to apply that in your business or life, and a few techniques, which is like a observing technique, consciously telling yourself that stress is your friend, and how that helps, and how compassion can be a very huge thing, how seeking help or being in the company of people is the best way to handle stress related things, and that stress is something which we don't have a choice on, because the world is going to be more stressful. What we have choice is actually how we handle that, how do we manage that. So that's what we learned. So with that, I'll stop. Thank you. And maybe we can take a couple of questions. I mean, we have a 12:15 and we have another 15 minutes. We can extend it. It's not a problem. So if any of you have questions, please feel free to put it in the chat. What have you practiced to improve?
So there's somebody called Monica who's raised her hand. I'll be unmuting her.
Sure.
Miss Monica, you're on.
Monica, it's kind of difficult to hear you.
Hey, Ranga, it was a good session. Thanks a lot.
ठीक है sir. ठीक. So Mr. Shan is going to ask a question.
Okay, cool. Thanks a lot for the great session. Are there any particular aspect of entrepreneur stress you want to touch upon, Ranga? Kind of entrepreneurs must be going through a lot of stress, particularly startup entrepreneurs, early stage or whatever different stage. I think everybody's kind of not alone in this. So if you want to touch upon any particular aspects of entrepreneur stress, it would be great.
Yeah, entrepreneurs actually have stress for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Okay, so you actually expect that, right? So there's no escaping from that. But I think it's a beautiful thing. Stress is a very beautiful thing. I think the key element is: are you alone in dealing with the stress, or you have an army of people doing that? Fortunately, we had a whole bunch of people who are willing to live. I think the when you have people, when you tell people that you need to share my stress and share my failures and share my challenges, you should actually also show path that you will share my success. Okay? If you do that, it can be beautifully shared. So, I mean, entrepreneurial being is all the more difficult. You got to worry about emotional intelligence as well as next month's salary. There's no escaping from that. I mean, the science doesn't differentiate. It is emotional intelligence or stress is same. Yeah. So somebody is asking, being in a creative field, when I say my mind is running like a wild horse, creatively speaking, does it mean emotional self-awareness? No, actually, that's a very different thing. That's a different skill. Creativity and your mind going is a different part of the brain. This is more about emotions, and more importantly, how you deal with emotions, how you manage these emotions, how you are aware. But having said that, being self-aware is a very great way to understand. Like, you are in a creative field, most likely you'll be dealing with customers. If you are able to understand yourself better, you'll be able to understand customers better. Many times, some of us uh, don't know when you're going to make a presentation as to what the audience wants. So we usually put ourselves and try to have empathy and think about what they want. And I would say about 50-60% of the times we got it right. So it could be useful. Any more questions? Anybody else? Thoughts?
So there are a few questions in the chat box.
Okay, somebody is saying sense of sacrifice by the leader. Venkat is asking, won't too much of empathy be taken as a sense of weakness and inability to be firm? No, not really. So, which is why I said that you need to take a set of decisions which are important using your rational thought, logic. Okay, but you can always implement them through empathy and thought. For example, let me give you, there was a time when we had to actually let go of a few people because things were bad. I mean, to save other people, we had to let go of some people. So how do you deal with that? How well you deal with that letting go of the people? What do you talk to them? And then so we went and did that with a lot of care. And in fact, we went one step further and actually spent time to figure out how to get employment, alternate employment for some of them. And we almost ended up getting 70-80% of them placed somewhere else. Now, the tough part of the deal is that my company P&L required that we reduce people, but the implementation meant that the person wasn't really struggling. And more importantly, after several years, he is friend to me. Okay, so these are not one for the other. They're very different domains. Any meditation technique to improve EQ? I mean, whole bunch. I think pranayama, meditation, these are huge assets. We are wasting time with Western worlds. Meditation helps you to become self-aware. Breathing techniques, observation skills. One small thing is what I said, but there are many of them. It surely helps in this. Question is, we have SaaS product catering to B2B customers, MSME segment. If sales is an emotional process, how to balance communication regarding product features? Very complex. But fundamentally, please do research. Buying happens because of an emotional need is satisfied by somebody. All other things like features and communication, everything actually goes on to justify that. Too complicated to this. Early morning running reduced was huge. Actually, I kind of had it, but I couldn't spend time. Biggest way to become stress is okay. Stress you can deal with that, but biggest way to become self-awareness is actually running. I have some friends here who are actually good runners here. when you run alone, and don't run with or walk with 15 people chatting about surround about lunch and all that. If you actually are there, you communicate beautifully between your body and mind. And running, and I've done that many times personally, it actually gives you a lot of clarity. It gives you good communication. It tells you a lot of things about yourself. And most of my weaknesses and most of my failures or failings I've discovered in my running. Do you plan to support leaders who would like to practice EQ and training and all that? I mean, as I said, I mean, I'm more a practitioner and who read that. I'm not a, I mean, I don't mind giving some inputs on coaching, but I'm not a EQ coach. There are some very, very nice tools. Can EQ be tested? Something, I think. There are a lot of good standard indices, tests. There are 100 question, 140 question thing, which are available, which you can use. Use that as a step to kind of find out where you are. Don't overanalyze that. But getting into practice is actually a very thing. See, the biggest achievement that your EQ is improving is you will start hearing it from your family or your colleagues. You know, if you're able to get that, I think that's the best thing. Somebody said I have a heated arguments with my suppliers and bank regarding payment issues and all that. Obviously, heated arguments is part of life, but I think you've got to figure out what is your response. Is that response having the best results? Is there an alternative? So do some self introspection, please. No, I mean, there are some questions around bordering on psychology. I mean, please, I'm not a psychologist or a counselor. Just a few books and practice everything. Mine is more experiential learning and not so much thing. So I may not be able to give you very specific inputs on, what should you tell your friend who says that I want to, get COVID and either survive or die. I think the least you should do is have a lot of conversation with that person. He seems to have challenges there. A lot of good books. So the two books I would recommend, Daniel Goleman is Authority and Emotional Intelligence, but there's a very $100 book actually, which I would recommend to many of you. And it's been there for 50 years called, most of you would be aware, Dale Carnegie. He wrote a book called How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. It's, I think, 100 rupees in Amazon, if I remember correct. It talks about how to create compartments in your minds and all that, which I read probably about 30 years back. And in my mind, it's helped me hugely. I mean, I had high pressure jobs, 25 years of entrepreneurship, never had a day where I didn't sleep well. So it's a very great book. I think Dale Carnegie's How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. Many good resources, fantastic TED Talks and videos. Emotional varies from personality to personality. Respond custom. Absolutely, it's very unique. It's very different, which is why it makes it interesting. If there is a fire or if there is any calamity, that no two person will respond in the same way. That's what makes it actually interesting in life. Does willfully putting oneself in stressful situations like bungee jumping improve ability to handle? Prakash, I think it's a good question. So there is, I mean, I don't know much about, but whatever I've read, this oxytocin that I talked about, it produces one is a joy, and it also gives you a lot of courage from a stress. Stress gets converted into courage and sometimes mad courage. This is bungee jumping and extreme adventures happen out of that. So stress plays a part in that. There, the stress is not your enemy; it's your extreme friend. The wife of that person might think that it is an enemy, but that person will think it is a friend. EQ is built by experience over years, or everyone will have same amount of, right? No. EQ is not a birth kind of thing. EQ can be, all of us have EQ. So let's not say that there's a person with EQ and intelligence and another person without it. All of us have a very good EQ. Particularly people in this call are leaders. I think it is something which can be continuously improved and changed, and it also has to change with respect to times. So it is not it's not a one-day game, or it's a lifelong exercise, in my opinion. All right, I guess those are the questions. How do you? No, there is some complex questions. It's difficult. Okay, now good question. I'm sorry I missed that. How EA differ from men to women gender? Now, the good news is that women have far higher levels of emotional intelligence than men. Not a good news for men. I mean, particularly the empathy and the social skills, they're extremely good, and they're naturally ahead of men. I'm not saying that study is saying that. Men have a couple of aspects. In fact, somebody mentioned assertiveness. Assertiveness is a very important self-aware quality. So confidence and assertiveness, some of them men may have a little edge actually, but women usually have a larger EQ. And at the top level, both of them have similar levels of EQ. I'm a little surprised why many women are not making it to the top, but you don't need scientific research. I mean, if you look at a home, our grandmas and mothers and wives handle situations far better than any one of us. I think it's a no-brainer kind of thing. So I think that's it. Mostly, I think I've answered most of the questions. Are the ones that I certainly can answer is what I've answered. So thank you very much for the session. I think I kind of somehow conned you to believe that I'm an expert in that. But more importantly, it's not about me. I think please take this homework seriously. Write it down. Write your emotions. Write your responses. Write situations. Do some of these exercises. I think it's a fun thing to learn the skill, and it's kind of can be very, very vital. But more than, I mean, the leadership is about running companies and all is fine. But leadership is also about teaching our children, showing them how to do things, deal with things in life, right? I think that's a bigger benefit than getting ahead in business, which is important, but it's the bigger benefit is what you can do in your life. I wish you all the best. I think together with this bunch, let's spread the awareness. Let's be compassionate. Let's get stronger. This is the best time to put our emotional intelligence to work. Good luck. Thank you.
Yes, sir. So on behalf of Tai Chennai, I would like to thank you, sir. On behalf of the participants who are present here too, I would like to thank you. So it was a wonderful session. We've got great feedbacks already. So thank you so much for taking extra time out of your schedule and giving it to us. You've taken about 12 to 15 minutes.
One last good news is that I'm done with the webinars, so people can relax.
Done, sir. Done. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
I'll be closing the chat now. Thank you.